before we get started. We didn't have any questions in advance, but we will have an opportunity at the end to ask questions. So you can provide the questions in the chat box below, or you can put your hand up at the, and there was a little icon that you can put your hand up and ask a question, then you can unmute your mic and ask that question. So the first thing I'd like to thank my partners, Chamber Group Insurance, 104.9 Move and 103.7 Bob FM, and to thank my sponsor, the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, where lifestyle grows good business. The United Counties of Leeds Grenville is an upper tier municipality located in Eastern Ontario and is comprised of 10 local municipalities. The counties is governed by indirectly elected bodies comprised of 10 councillors and one from each of the local municipalities. Ann Weir has been with the United Counties for 12 years as the Economic Development Manager. She is instrumental in delivering economic growth for our area. And I want to say thank you to Ann, because at the beginning of this pandemic, she gathered multiple businesses, organization into a working group to help us mitigate through this pandemic. And it has, like I said, been very instrumental and very, very important as we move through and have been moving through for the last year. So I would like to welcome Ann Weir to introduce our guest speaker. Welcome, Ann.
Well, I thank Pam. Certainly, it's indeed a pleasure to welcome Pierre. He's the Vice President for Research and Chief Economist at BDC, and been that since 2012. And Pierre leads a team of experts, and I know Zeke is on the line as one of those individuals. Hi, Zeke, and thanks for being part of our business working group. Pierre leads a team of experts who analyze economic development, economic data, identifying business sectors and trends and impacting Canadian entrepreneurs. And this year has certainly been one of those years where we are wanting that information more so than ever. He's a seasoned speaker. He's been our speaker, our keynote speaker. So it is indeed a privilege to have him in such a small group format today. He's been a speaker at our Economic Development Summit and ranked as one of our top speakers ever in all time. So thank you, Pierre, for doing that. He's got a really interesting background, and this is why I love listening to a little of his background. 25 years as economist, in influential positions that have had a direct impact on entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad. And this includes Vice President Analysis in the National Industry Clusters Development Program for the Government of Saudi Arabia. His role was to create program strategies, define sector policies, and conduct financial and economic analysis of industrial projects. He was also a Quebec Assistant Deputy Minister for Economic Development, Innovation, and Export Trade, which is another great portfolio that he brings to this table, knowing so much about our provincial governments and what economic policies and programs are out there to support small and medium-sized businesses and encourage that entrepreneurship. He's certainly been a strategic advisor for Montreal International, where he's responsible for attracting foreign investments. So Pierre, anytime you want to come into Ontario and track some of that, love to have some of that foreign investment here. And this is all within his 25 years. He's worked 12 years. So you must be like ancient, Pierre, because I feel like you've got so much experience, but you're so youthful in looks and all of that. He has 12 years with the Federation of Independent Business, so he understands you as individual businesses. Pierre, welcome. It's indeed a great pleasure to have you here and for us to be a sponsor in today's event. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anne, for this great presentation. I'm going to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation I would like to share with everybody. So everybody should see my screen right now. So my presentation has three parts. First, I'm going to talk about where we are in terms of the recovery of this pandemic. Second, I'm going to talk about 2021, what's our forecast for this year. And third, I'm going to talk about new trends, how the economy is going to look like after this pandemic. So first, let's see where we are. As you know, COVID-19 had a huge impact on our economy, and that's also the case for the world economy. China is the only major economy that is going to have positive growth in 2020. The United States, Japan, Germany, Canada, all these developed economies had contraction in 2020. And some countries like France and United Kingdom had a major contraction, like United Kingdom around 10%. So COVID-19 had a huge impact on the world economy. But the good news is the recovery is much faster than what we have seen in the past. So, for example, if we look at the world trade volume, we are already back to the pre-crisis level in only 6 or 7 months. If you compare to the crisis in 2008, 2009, it took 3 years to go back to the pre-crisis level. So this recession is quite different. This is not a financial crisis. This is not because there was a housing bubble in the United States or something else. It's a self-imposed recession to fight the virus and to protect our healthcare system. So through the presentation, I'm going to show you or try to demonstrate that this is a very different recession, and this is actually a good news for the recovery. The United States now, as you know, this is a very important country for us. 80% of Ontario export are going to the States, so this is a major economy for Canada. And the situation has been very difficult in the United States. The graph that you see is the number of new cases per million people. In blue, you have the United States. In red, you have Canada. The second wave, as you can see from the graph, has been very tough, very hard on the United States. And this is having an impact on the recovery. This is the level of job in the US. They lost 20 million jobs during the first lockdown. And the initial recovery was quite strong, but actually the recovery stopped because of the second wave. The second wave in the US has been so difficult that actually the economy has not created more jobs over the last few months. So there's still 10 million jobs missing. So that's a huge impact on the economy. The manufacturing sector is actually coming back. It's almost back to the pre-crisis level. And retail sales came back quickly, but slowed down for the last 3 months. The January numbers, the last numbers are actually really good. Just before Christmas, the federal US government has introduced a new program to help Americans. They sent a check to most Americans that really had an impact on retail. So the situation so far has been difficult in the United States. A lot of COVID-19 cases that really slow down the recovery. However, we're quite positive about 2021, and for two reasons. First, they are really accelerating the vaccination in the US. Mr. Biden promised to vaccinate more than 100 million Americans in his first 100 days. He's going to reach that goal because they are producing a vaccine in the US and they are really doing well in terms of vaccinating people. They are vaccinating between 8 and 9 million people a week, so that's really massive. The second reason why we're optimistic is because Mr. Biden is introducing a new program to help the recovery, a program of $1,900 billion. This number is so big that it's actually hard to pronounce, but this is a huge amount of money, even for the US economy, and this is going to help the recovery. And by rebound, it's going to have positive impact on the Canadian economy as well. So we are pretty optimistic. We're not the only one. The confidence index in the US are back to the pre-crisis level, actually higher. So there's a lot of confidence for 2021. Our forecast is the growth in the US is going to be 3.5%. And it's going to, before the end of this year, the US economy should be back to the pre-crisis level. So that's actually quite an optimistic view. But the way the vaccination is going, it's most American might be vaccinated by the beginning of the summer. So this is highly possible that the economy will recover very, very quickly. Canada now, this is where we are. We lost 3 million jobs. We have recuperated the large part of these jobs. And as you can see from the graph, the job creation has slowed down over the last 2 months because of the second wave. We lost 200,000 jobs in January, mostly because of Quebec and Ontario. Both provinces put some more restriction in January, and this is a big economies, both provinces. So we lost 200,000 jobs just in 1 month. But this is again because we impose restriction to fight this virus. So this is not because the economy is not performing well. So this is going to come back. When we look at the recovery by sector, it's quite different. Some sectors are already back to the pre-crisis level. For example, financial sector, 104%. There's actually 45,000 Canadians working more today in this sector than in February. So this sector has not experienced a recession, I would say. Manufacturing is back 100%. In total in Canada, we are at 96% the level of job of February. If you look at the bottom of the graph, you can see that some sectors are not doing so well. That's the case of accommodation and food services. There's a lot of restriction on restaurants and on tourism. So this is not surprising, but that shows you that the recovery has really two different speed in Canada. The good news is we are performing better than other developed economies. Our recovery has been stronger than in the US. We are at 96% the level of job of February compared to 94% for the United States. And if I had other major developed economies on this graph like France and UK, you would see that we are doing better as well. So there's two reasons why we are doing better. First, we did a better job to control the virus in Canada than they did in the United States and in other developed economies like Germany or France or United Kingdom. And the second reason is our government has introduced a number of programs to support the economy, to help Canadians and also Canadian businesses. So for example, the graph that you see show you that Canadians as the transfer to Canadians has increased by 58%, more than $200 billion. So that's a huge amount of money helping Canadians to cope with this situation. And this had a positive impact on our disposable income. Disposable income is basically all the revenue that Canadians are getting, for example, from pension, salary, investment, or government transfer, minus the tax that we pay. So as you can see, the disposable income in Canada is actually higher today than before the recession. So this really helped the recovery in Canada. For example, our retail sales came back very quickly. It's higher today than it was before the crisis, despite the fact that our unemployment rate is much higher. The situation in Ontario now, well, it's very close to the Canadian situation. Lately, in the last few months, actually, it's a little bit below the average, and the reason is there's more restriction on the Ontario economy because of COVID-19 in January. So that's explaining the difference. In terms of sectors, this picture is quite similar to the Canadian one. Financial services are 106% of the situation before the crisis. The manufacturing sector is performing well. There's actually 15,000 more people working in manufacturing in Ontario than before the crisis. So this is a very good news. So in total, the Ontario economy is at 95%. And if you look at the bottom of the graph, just like for the rest of the country, the accommodation and food services are really suffering from this crisis. I'm going to actually show you the situation for food and accommodation. And this is quite interesting. This is the level of job in that sector. If we start in February at 100%, in April, during the first lockdown, well, the accommodation and food services sector lost 50% of their jobs. So that's really major. As you might remember, during the summer, we lift some of the restriction. We opened restaurants with some restriction. So the level of job came back to 86%. And during the second wave, we had to put more restrictions. So we're back to 65%. So the reason why I wanted to show you this graph is for two reasons. The first one is to show you the real impact of restrictions. And by saying that, I'm not saying that restrictions are not good. I think they are necessary, but they have a huge impact on the economy. Look at the level of job that we lost in one sector because of the restriction. The second conclusion, it's actually a good news, is when you lift the restriction, the sector is coming back very quickly. We saw that last summer when we were able to reopen restaurants with some restriction, but we were able to reopen restaurants while the level of job came back very quickly. So this is again a different scenario than past recession. One, we are going to vaccine people and we will be able to lift restriction. We will see the economy coming back very quickly. The manufacturing sector in Ontario is performing well despite what happened last year in the transport equipment. There was a huge decline during the first lockdown, but we're back to the pre-crisis level, almost back to the pre-crisis level. Food is back to the level that before, and chemical as well. So if we look at transportation, there's really two stories. In terms of the automotive, we are actually higher in terms of production than before the crisis, but that's not the case for aerospace products. And this is not surprising. As you know, we don't travel by plane anymore, and this is going to be the case for part of this year still. So the demand for planes and parts are really down, and even maintenance is really down. So that's explaining. It's going to take a few years before this sector is going back to the pre-crisis level. The good news is on the housing market. And actually, this is a bit surprising. Like, look at Ontario, housing starts increased by 16% last year. Home sales increased by 8.7%. This is very significant. This is surprising for most economists because when we have a slowdown or a recession like we did in 2020, we usually have a slowdown in the housing market, which was not the case last year. We did a lot of research to understand what's going on. Low interest rate has a positive impact on the housing market. Also, most people who lost their job are very low income people, and they are not the one who are basically in the housing market. So the one who are buying and selling houses didn't lose their job. So that's probably a reason explaining that. A lot of Canadians are working from home, so a lot of Canadians are shopping for bigger home, and that's probably explaining part of it. But this is surprising. We expect 2021 to be another good year for the housing market for both Ontario and also Canada. So the recovery so far is well on the way, but we're still missing some sectors because of the restriction we impose on them. So what should we expect for 2021? Well, we are quite optimistic about this year. We believe 2021 is going to be the year of the recovery. We expect the Canadian economy to grow by 4.5%. So that's a bit optimistic, but we have 5 reasons why we believe that. First, and the most important one, is the vaccination. The graph that you see is show you how we're doing in terms of vaccination. We are lagging compared to other developed economies, but we are accelerating the vaccination now. So by the end of the summer, most Canadians should be vaccinated. And this is so important for the economy because it means that provincial government will be able to lift most of the restriction we have on our economy, and we should be able to rebound pretty quickly. Give you an example, for the Canadian manufacturing sector, in red, you see the current situation, and you can see that we are almost back in terms of the production. This is a December number. In December, we were at 96%, the level of production from February. So in about 8 months, we were almost back to the pre-crisis level. In blue, you have the recovery in 2008, 2009. It took more than 3 years to go back to 95% of the production. So this is a very different recession. And this is the reason why we are optimistic. We believe that when we are vaccinated, which would be by the end of the summer, we will be able to lift most of the restrictions, and sectors are going to come back. Jobs are going to come back very quickly. The second reason why we are optimistic is because commodity prices have been rebounding very quickly. In yellow, you have lumber that is very important for the Ontario economy. You can see prices are very high demand because of the housing market has been good everywhere in North America. Our export of lumber in Canada has increased by 40%. So this is very important. This will continue in 2021, which is going to help the economy. Third reason to be optimistic is, as I showed before, government program has already helped the recovery this year, and it will continue to help the recovery in 2021. Most of these programs are still into effect, and this is really going to help the recovery in the next 6 months. And on top of that, provincial governments like Ontario government is introducing a number of programs to help the recovery as well. For example, the Ontario government is going to accelerate key infrastructure projects that are going to create jobs everywhere in the province. And of course, interest rates are still low. They will remain low for the next 2 years before we see a slightly increase. That's our perception and that's our vision. So we believe this is going to help the recovery as well. The fourth reason why we are optimistic is coming from consumer. The graph that you see is showing you the saving that Canadians have been making over the last few years. Well, in 2019, Canadians saved $18 billion. Last year, they saved more than $200 billion. So that's a huge increase. This is not very surprising. In every recession, consumers are saving money because of the uncertainty. So people will postpone a major buy. For example, they won't buy a car, they will wait for the next year. And when the recession is over, usually the first year after the recession, they spend a lot more money. We expect to see the same. Last year, Canadians saved a lot of money because of the uncertainty, but also because of the restrictions. We couldn't travel, we couldn't go to restaurants, even shopping mall were closed for a while. So that's explaining why people save so much money. So we believe as the vaccination is happening, restrictions are going to be lifted by this summer. We believe that consumers are going to come back to the market and they're going to help the recovery of the economy. Finally, on the business side, business investment intentions are really improving. These data for Ontario. We can see that we are still in a negative zone. So, but the numbers are really improving. So we expect to see more investment this year than we saw last year. So 5 factors explaining why we are optimistic about 2021. But of course, there's a risk to this forecast, and the risk is COVID-19. We are at the end of the second wave right now. The key element or the key factor is going to be the vaccination. If we are able to vaccinate most Canadians by the end of the summer, well, we will have a strong economic recovery in 2021. The last part of the presentation is about the post-pandemic. We are already thinking about how our economy is going to look like after this pandemic is over. We're seeing 4 trends that are changing our business environment. The first one is the online business. The online business is not a new trend, but it really accelerated over the last 12 months. The numbers that you see is actually the real volume of online business in Canada. So if we look at the beginning of the graph in January, February 2020, before the pandemic, Canadians were buying for $1.6 billion every month online. The last number we have, which is December 2020, well, it bought for $4.7 billion. So this is 3 times the level, the volume of the online business before the pandemic. So this is what the pandemic did. It did accelerated the online business. A lot of people were afraid to go to shopping malls, to stores. Retail stores were closed for a while. So a lot of Canadians bought something online for the first time, and they liked it. They liked the benefit of it. And according to our latest survey with consumers, 42% of Canadians are saying they're going to buy more online in the next 6 months. When we talk to younger people, well, it's actually 50%. So the online business is not going to slow down. It's just going to continue to accelerate. And a lot of businesses understand that. This time we did a survey on the business side, and business people are telling us that they are investing more to improve their presence online. They improve their website. They want to be more active on social media. They launch promotional campaigns online. So they really see where the market is going. They want to benefit from this trend. So first trend is the online business. Second one is the teleworking. 40% of Canadians are working from home today, which is a huge percentage. So the question is this teleworking going to continue after the pandemic? When we asked business people, and 59% said that they believe that some of their employees are going to work remotely after the pandemic. This is quite a change compared to the beginning of this situation. We did a lot of surveys over the last few years, and we never saw a big appetite from the business side to have their employees working from home. The pandemic has really changed the game in that way. Many businesses have invested in technology to allow the employees to work from home. They were forced to do it, but also they saw the benefits. They saw the good side of it, and they changed the perception. Now, Canadian entrepreneurs believe that it's improved innovation. It's actually good for employee productivity. It's actually good for employee motivation. Look at the bottom of this slide. 18% of Canadian entrepreneurs believe that their workspace needs will decrease in the future. So they also see the benefits of having more people working from home. A few weeks ago, I was giving a similar conference to some business people in Barrie, Ontario, and after me there was a panel of business owners, and I was really surprised. There was a manufacturer there who said that 40% of the employees are working from home today. So, and he believed that at the end of the pandemic, there will be a significant percentage of the employee continue to work from home. So this is a game changer. The pandemic has really changed the game, and we're going to have a different job market after the pandemic. The third trend is a bit surprising. We saw much more investment in technology last year, despite the fact that total investment went down. Actually, technology investment went up. A lot of companies saw their revenue drop last year, and in response to that, they invested more in technology to reduce their costs. They wanted to become more efficient to improve their productivity. And this momentum in investing in technology will continue this year, according to our research. Finally, the fourth trend, it's not a new trend, it's a trend that is coming back. It's the labor shortage. Remember before the pandemic how difficult it was to recruit people? Well, this is a survey from the Bank of Canada, and it's showing that the percentage of businesses in Canada saying that shortage of labor is an issue is actually coming back at the same level than before the pandemic. So this is not really surprising. As the economy is improving, our structural challenges are coming back. We have an aging population in Canada. A lot of Canadians are going to retire in the next 5 years. We don't have a lot of young people entering the job market. Last year, immigration dropped by half because of the pandemic. So you should expect, as business people, that shortage of labor is going to come back by the end of the year. So you should prepare for that. So 4 trends that are going to shape our new business environment: more and more online business, more than ever before. Canadians are going to work more remotely than before. Businesses, there's a real momentum. They're investing more in technology. And finally, shortage of labor is coming back. So in conclusion, the recovery in Canada is really underway, and it's doing well with some exception in some sectors where there's heavy restrictions like accommodation and food services. We expect a strong rebound in 2021, but there's a risk to this forecast. Vaccination is going to be crucial to this positive forecast. If we are able to vaccinate most Canadians by the end of the summer, we should have a very good recovery in 2021. I'm going to stop here. We'll be happy to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Pierre, and very insightful, very positive news on the recovery. And it's remarkable, and we've used this word a lot, but how many businesses have pivoted and with the online, and it shows by your numbers. So does anybody have any questions for Pierre? Just put your hand up or your little icon, and okay, Barry. So go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Pierre. One challenge that we're seeing, I'm in the construction trade industry, and we're seeing commodity prices going up extremely, sometimes weekly, in fact. And we're seeing a wire price increase, so we're looking at about 45%, our suppliers and manufacturers are telling us. What long-term effect, or when do you see inflation being a challenge with the price increases?
A very good question. It's the demand in the construction industry has been very strong as the The housing market in North America has been performing very well. We believe that the situation will continue in 2021 and it will slow down after that. So price should be back to normal in 2022. It won't have a huge impact on inflation because it's an important sector, but inflation is, for the overall economy. So some sectors are quite weak. For example, everything related to personal services, restaurant accommodation. So the inflation is only 1% right now, and we don't believe inflation is it should increase to 2% this year as the economy recovered, but we don't expect inflation to be very significant. But having said that, like if we have, like for example, we have 1% inflation right now, but in your sector, inflation is much higher than that. And so it really depends of the sector. Some sectors are still very weak. Some other sectors are performing very well and prices are going up. But in general, for the Canadian economy, inflation should be back to around 2%, which is, I don't think is going to be a big challenge for the recovery.
So does anybody else have any questions? I'll just check my chat box. There's nothing down here, but by all means, please. Zeke, would you like to say? Okay, Kaylee, go right ahead.
Pierre, same question, but a little different. Oil and gas sector, we're seeing fuel. I've heard rumblings about where fuel prices are going, and then we know then if fuel changes, foods prices are changing. So what's your thoughts? You covered a lot of the resources in Canada, but we're already seeing it at the pump today. So just like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, actually, the oil sector is coming back this year as the world demand is coming back. The oil price really dropped last year as the world economy was stuck in this recession. Still, the world demand is still 10% down compared to the February level. But as most people are getting vaccinated around the world, mobility is going to increase, and we expect that the world demand is going to be back to the pre-crisis level sometimes this year, and oil price should be back as well. So this is a good news for Canada because, as you know, we produce a lot of oil, and this is going to help our, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland, and it's going to help the Canadian economy overall. But we're going to pay more at the pump, and this is so we're going back to the pre-crisis level in 2021 in terms of the oil sector.
I do have a question for Zeke, and then Catherine, and then Jamie. So Zeke, if you wanted to unmute yourself, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, of course, for coming today, Pierre. I'm happy to always see a positive outlook on things and to know where we're going. So thanks for taking the time. One of my biggest questions is always, and I've heard you speak to it before, and it really stuck with me, where does Canada sit, knowing that we pretty much have our backs against the wall from a monetary policy and rate adjustment standpoint? And we know that we've put a lot of money out in different types of supports as well. We should, and it seems to have positive effects. But knowing that, where do we sit in be it comparison to other countries or to our past performance or future elasticity in our government debt position? That's a conversation that comes up with anyone you speak to, be it business or otherwise. Do we have enough room to manage another event like this if it happened again in the next 5 or 10 years?
That's a very good question. Actually, we are in a good position, and the reason is we were in a very good position before the crisis. So before the pandemic, a year ago, actually, our debt to GDP ratio was 30%, which was the lowest among what we call the most developed economies. This the G7. So that's the US, Germany, France, UK. I'm missing some, but the 7 biggest economy, Japan. So we were only at 30%. Today, a year later, we are at 50%. So you see the jump. We went 30 to 50, so that's a huge jump. But we're still at the lowest with Germany now. Germany is at 50% as well. So we are still in a good position. Our GDP, debt to GDP is at 50%. The US is 100%. Japan is 250%. So we're still in good shape. Having said that, it will be important in the future to improve our situation to be able to face the next recession. Of course, we don't know when there's going to be the next recession, but if we were able to spend so much money to help this time, it's because we were in a good position before. So in the next few years after the pandemic, I think governments are going to start talking about how we rebalance the budget. In the past, governments were they were trying to do it very quickly. I don't think it's going to be the case this time. Our deficit is so high, so I think governments are going to have like a 10-year plan to improve our situation. The question I get asked all the time: are we going to see tax increase in the next few years to pay for that? Personally, I don't think so. I think governments are going to focus on the recovery. The recovery is well on the way, but it's not done. We're still, like in Canada, missing 800,000 jobs. Well, 86% of them are in food, accommodation, retail. So most of our sectors are doing well, but the recovery is not over. So first, governments are going to focus on that. So they're going to stay away from increasing taxes. In the next 3 or 4 years, well, we're going to see, depending which government is going to be in place, how they want to do that. But my vision, what I believe is they're going to take 10 years to solve this issue, because it's going to be too hard on the economy if they increase taxes. So, but I agree with you, we are in good shape because we were in very good shape before, but it's a good idea to improve our situation to be ready for the next recession, whenever it's going to be the next recession.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Catherine Hobbs, did you have a question? Did you want to unmute, or did you want me to read the question that you had in the chat box? I think she's looking for the unmute. So what I'll do is there you go. Perfect.
I didn't see I was up on the screen. So I'm just wondering, you had mentioned that the seniors are exiting the workforce, and we're not seeing the same amount of young people entering the workforce. And I was wondering why that is. Is that a result of the government providing income for young people?
Technology, love it.
Technology, but I think I got the question. Actually, it's not. It's just because we don't have as many kids that we used to. So the baby boomers that we have been talking about for a long time, while they are leaving the job market, in the next 10 years, most baby boomers in Canada will be retiring. There were a lot of them. So for many decades, we had a lot of labor in Canada because the baby boomers there was so many of them. But now the new generations coming to the job market are not as many, because we don't have as many kids that we used to. We do have immigration, but immigration doesn't compensate for the lack of young people entering the job market. Especially in 2020, immigration dropped by half because of the pandemic. We expect to have a low number this year in 2021, and it should go back to normal in 2022. The federal government understands that, and they have actually said that they are going to double the number of immigrants for the next 3 years coming to Canada to help to the labor force. So our situation in Canada is not different from other developed economies like Germany or France or Japan was the first country to experience an aging population. But it's going to, the next 10 years, it's going to be difficult. We're going to have difficulties to recruit people. So for businesses, it's important to prepare for that. There's no magic solution. But investing in technology to replace workers is a good idea. It's not always the case. It's not always possible. For example, you cannot replace your truck driver by a robot. Not yet, anyway. Maybe in 10 years it will be possible, but not yet. But you can replace a number of tasks inside your business by technology. Another way to help is to market your business in a better way. You know, we all do a lot of marketing to sell our products and services. We often don't do marketing to market our business as a good employer. But as it will be difficult to recruit in the next 5 to 10 years, it would be important to do that, especially with the young population, like to have to market our business on social media. That's where the young people are looking for jobs. So it would be important to do that. And finally, look for pool of workers that have more difficulties to find a job. For example, young people getting out of school with no experience, they have higher unemployment rates. Same thing for older Canadians. Now Canadians are working much more later. Like the number of Canadians over 55 who are working, it's actually increasing very rapidly. We live longer, we are in better shape. So a lot of Canadians work after they retired. Another group of people who have difficulties or more difficulties to find a job is people who are coming to Canada, immigrants. They have more difficulties. So we will have to be more creative as business people because it's going to be more difficult to hire people.
Awesome. So now we just have Jamie, and then I see Chiffon has a question after Jamie.
Thanks, Pierre. So I have a two-part question, and you started to touch on it a bit there. With regards to employment recovery, is there any research or information to suggest that following multiple shutdowns and employers kind of getting this glimpse into doing work differently, I guess, will we see certain jobs not recover or potentially migrate elsewhere, for example, gig work? And I guess related to that, have you noticed in the last 12 months there have been any observable or significant shifts in non-traditional economies like the access and sharing economies?
Actually, this is a very good question, and we look into that, especially last summer before after the first lockdown was very important in Canada. So we thought that the recovery would be different, but actually numbers doesn't show that. As soon as the restrictions are lifted, what we see is the level of activities is increasing and the number of jobs are increasing the same way. So we were actually a bit surprised of that. We thought that investing in technology would change. So probably some companies are operating differently now, but overall, it seems to be exactly the same way that it was. So for example, some sectors are already back: financial services, manufacturing, provincial services, exactly the same. Retail is different, a lot more online. For example, the accommodation in restaurants, they are really struggling. But what we saw last summer is as soon as you lift the restriction on restaurant, the level of jobs is just jumping back. So we don't think it's going to be different beside the teleworking that is going to be different. We strongly believe that teleworking is going to be much more popular after this pandemic. And the reason for that is there's a strong demand from people on the employee side, and businesses are much more open. They realize that it's possible to have a mix between working from home and working from the workplace, and it's highly efficient. And so I think there's going to be much more of that in the future. But beside that, we haven't seen a change in terms of the structure of the labor market.
Perfect. All good, Jamie? You finished? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Chiffon, did you have a question? If you just wanted to unmute yourself, perfect.
Great. Hi, Pierre. Thank you for your presentation so far. You mentioned that, and I want to make sure I got this right, that it'll take 3 to 10 years roughly. I'm in accommodations, okay? So we're struggling. My question is with the gas at the tank going up and accommodations, it's going to take a while before that starts to come back. Do you predict, do you feel that the tourism or the travel will be more international, since people have been dying to get south, that they're going to go south, or are they going to be more reserved and stay in Canada and then look for local? I mean, last summer the trend was pretty much that those that could get out stayed local. They weren't traveling to southern places. But my gut feeling is that the minute those borders are open and people are vaccinated, they're going south. They're not going to stay in Canada to spend their dollars that they saved all last year. They're dying to get out. So I guess, and with the price of oil and gas going to be going up at the tank, why spend your money traveling across Canada when you can go south? 33% of our customers are from Europe, 33% roughly the US, and then 28 Canada is what we have been surviving on for the last 4 years. And it'll be, I'm just wondering what you think we can look forward to. Is it going to take us 10 years to make up the last year and a half, or are we hoping for a sooner recovery than that in the accommodations department?
I think the way we see it is it's not going to take 10 years. I think next summer is going to, I think Canadians are going to travel much more. I think they will continue to travel quite a bit in Canada like they did last summer, because I think we will be at the beginning of the summer, the level of vaccination in Canada would be such, we won't be done, but would be such that a lot of the restrictions inside Canada are going to be lifted. So I think we will be traveling inside Canada much more in 2021. I think it will have to probably wait until 2022 before you see Europeans coming back and Americans coming back. So it's going to be probably in 2 stages. And the way I see it is first, Canadians are going to travel in Canada before they go abroad, because Canada is going to be quite safe in the summer. It's not going to be the case everywhere around the world. So I think we're going to continue to be inside the border, and it's going to for the next 12 months, it's going to open up to the world. So the way I see it is next summer should be good, mostly with Canadian travelers. And in 2022, the situation should be back to normal, because by 2022, most developed economies will be all vaccinated. So people who will be probably ready to travel between developed economies.
Okay, can I just add a little caveat to that? Given the fact that our biggest sellers were the festivals that brought people to the area, okay, those festivals are not going to be taking place the same way they did before. I'm sure we're not going to have the crowds coming like we had before, because people are just going to be very wary of, okay, I'm vaccinated, but how many others are? Like, did everybody get their vaccine? And then you have your anti-vaxxers, and then you have a lot of people. I mean, there's so many rumors out there about the vaccine not going to be compliant because the virus is constantly changing. So if we haven't got the same reasons for people to come here, how can the accommodation field rebound? I mean, there aren't. Anyhow, yeah,
I think you're right. I think it's going to be a bumpy ride, and I think 2021, the next summer, is going to be bumpy as well. I'm not sure if even festivals are going to stand for 2021, but I'm pretty confident about 2022. By, let's say most Canadians are getting vaccinated by the end of the summer this year. Americans will be vaccinated probably before that. Europe is doing well as well. So by the end of the summer, or the end of the year, let's say, most people are going to be vaccinated. So I think the situation like festivals are going to go back to normal in 2022. I don't know what they're going to do this summer, because the summer is a bit uncertain so far. But in 2022, I think we will be back to normal. I'm not a health expert, but so far what we are seeing is the vaccine is quite efficient. People who have been vaccinated, like older people in Canada, the vaccine has been extremely efficient with them. And so far, it seems to be efficient with the different variants as well. So I'm confident that when most people are vaccinated, I think the level of cases is going to drop like a rock. And I think we will be able to be back to normal. If it's not at the end of 2021, probably in 2022.
Yes, David, I knew that you had a question, so go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Pierre, again for speaking today. Just wanted to talk about the manufacturing side of your comments, saying that we've increased versus February, which is great. So is that because we're kind of executing on that pent-up demand that was closed down, and we're still we're delivering on that, or are you seeing that there's going to be a renaissance in the Canadian and Ontario manufacturing sector? And based on the fact that we're, is there a move towards more onshoring, localized supply chains, securing that? I mean, there's some, great effort by some of our Canadian and Ontario businesses that pivoted to support the supply chains. We'll talk about PPE, so forth, because the Canadian government asked and the Ontario government asked. And then I'm also seeing that, 5-6 months later, there's a cheaper version, capacities, Asia caught up with capacity, and now those supply chains are moving back. So I guess, obviously from some of the manufacturing sector clients that I support, there's been a bit of frustration in that regard, that are we staying localized? Are we supporting the long-term manufacturing capacity and supply chains in Canada? Or is it just going to be lowest price wins nationally in the long run, or globally?
That's a very good question, and that's something we look into that, and you won't like my answer. We, last May and June, we really looked into that issue because we thought that the pandemic would change the value chain, and actually it's not. It did at the beginning when China, as you know, they got the virus first. So they were under a lockdown before Canada. So when you were buying something from China for about 2 months, like in April and May, it was really difficult to get your products from China. But like you said, as they went back to normal, actually the value chain went back to normal. We look at the numbers in terms of export, import, and quickly, like exactly what you said. Back in September, we were just back to normal. Canadian businesses, they were buying the same way they were buying before the pandemic. So we thought the pandemic would change we will see more reshoring, but actually in the numbers doesn't show that. Maybe it's the case in very specialized product like medical device related to the pandemic. But beside that, we don't see, we haven't seen any change. So the performance of the manufacturing sector is basically because we are going back to the pre-crisis level in many ways, and Canadians, consumers have been buying a lot of products, so the manufacturing sector is benefiting from that. And we're going back, like the automotive sector, was shut down for a few months, and now we are catching up, and that's the reason why we're doing well. But it's not because unfortunately, it's not because we are reshoring. We like I said, we really look into that because we were hoping for that, but we didn't see that.
Good point, and so were we. We were hoping that, and maybe hopefully we can talk to levels of government to kind of hopefully change that mindset. But as we go forward, it's been a very informative session that you have given us today, Pierre, and we really, really appreciate your time. So as we close out, and I don't think there's any more questions or hands raised or anything in the comment, just closing out, I would like everybody just to turn on their camera if they can, so we can do a little smiley snapshot of this wonderful group of people. And Jan will take out the camera and take a little picture. So when you're ready, Jan, tell everybody to smile and cheese.
Okay, we got everybody. We're gonna do two so I can get both pages in here. So first one, say cheese. Okay, and page 2. Here we go again. Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. As we close out the session, I just want to remind people on the call of some of the upcoming events the Chamber is putting on. March 11 at 9 a.m. in partnership with the Employment and Education Center, RTO 9 Zoom call with COVID-19 tourism adaptation funds, and find out if your tourism entity is eligible for these funds. So that is again, March 11th. On March 22nd at 9 a.m., we have the update from Mayor Baker. And then on March 30th at 9 a.m., we have our AGM. So all of those items are on our calendar events. So please sign up and enjoy and join us for all these multiple calls. Once again, thank you so much, Pierre, for your time, and really, really appreciate your insight.
Well, thank you, everybody. It was a great discussion, so I really appreciated a lot of great questions. So thank you for participating so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a wonderful day.